How's it going? Welcome back to another PT Pearl from the Optimal Body Podcast. I'm Dr. Dom.
I'm DocJen.
And today we're going to be talking the Achilles. What is it? No, it's not the guy who was in the Trojan horse. Achilles tendinitis. It's that heel pain and what causes that, what's that come from, and how can we start to approach it? So stay tuned and check it out. So I think where some people may have heard of Achilles, of course, is Achilles heel, which kind of points us in the right direction. It's this big ropey tendon that kind of comes down into the back of our heel. And it's the primary attachment of these big, huge muscles in our calf. So lots of power goes through these things. They work every time we push up on our toe when we're walking, running, going upstairs. They're active just in standing. So the majority of the day when we're on our feet, there's tension and there's stuff going through that Achilles tendon, right?
Exactly. And a lot of times it can present as pain right down at the base of the heel, or might even have pain through that tendon just a little bit, because what ends up building up is a little bit of inflammation. I mean, Achilles tendinitis. Itis, we've gone over before, is inflammation. And I even had it myself before. I don't know. I mean, it was such a long time ago. I was actually in physical therapy school, and I remember I was probably running a little bit more than I had been at the time. And I can remember kind of grabbing a little bit of my Achilles, and I would just kind of pump my foot down and back, and I could feel like it sounded like rubber kind of rubbing together in that area. And I was like, oh my God, I can hear it when I'm moving my foot, and it feels crazy. And really, ultimately, I knew that it was Achilles tendinitis. And at the time I had just really, I knew that it was inflammation, took some time away from it, and didn't really do anything different though, which we're going to dive into today of the things I could have done.
Totally. And the first thing we usually dive into is like, why does Achilles tendinitis happen? Again, itis kind of meaning that inflammation or inflammatory process, which means it's more short-lived, right? And if we have it for a long time, that's where it can develop into more of a tendinopathy, right? Or just this actual change of the structure of the tendon if we allow that to continue. And again, if you want to hear more into that process, we have a whole episode on tendinitis, tendinopathy, and that kind of thing. But basically, this is telling us that, okay, we're putting too much force through that tendon in a way that it might not be able to recover, or we're not giving it enough recovery time. The Achilles tendinitis itself isn't bad because that inflammation is just telling us, hey, you loaded me a little too much. Where we go wrong is we go out a couple days later right away and do the same thing without doing anything different. So again, what have we done different that would make it not get inflamed that time? It's that tendon not having the recovery time, because the muscles can recover a little bit quicker than the tendons can. Yeah.
And a part of that recovery is progressing it to a point where we don't have to, wait for it every single time, where it's like, now I modify and I back off, and then I slowly make the progressions necessary to build strength and tolerance and load within that tendon. And for me at the time, my modification was rest.
Stopping.
Which is not, stopping was irritating it. Not a bad thing to do, right? That's something that we need to initially start to address. But then after we've kind of backed off and modified, how do we then take the necessary steps of adequate progression back into that structure?
Yeah, that's always the fail safe. Is like, oh, it hurts when you do that. Well, stop that, and then 6 weeks later, you're feeling great. Okay, let's do it again. No, we got to add something in to help progress, which is where we'll talk into a few exercises and how we can know where our body's at in that ability to load through that Achilles. That's not about how the movement looks. It's about your preparedness for the movement.
Exactly.
The stretch shorten cycle is this reflex that we have in our body, right? And it's exactly what it sounds like. We stretch and then it shortens, right? If we quickly stretch a muscle, it will shorten in reflex because our muscles are all used to resting at a steady level. So if we suddenly stretch it, the muscle's like, nope, I'm going to hang on so we don't strain or injure ourselves. The faster we stretch, the more it might shorten and hold on. So again, if you're not used to quick stretches, so say jumping and landing and your calf quickly needing to control your body to the ground.
Yeah, your heel coming all the way down and kind of lengthening that.
Right. And thinking about, okay, if I land on my toes and my heels just slam into the ground, that's really quick, going from full plantar flexion up on your toes to flat-footed, right? And so that's a really quick stretch through that Achilles tendon, you know, versus slowly doing a heel raise or something like that. That's a lot slower of a stretch, so we're not going to have as much of that reflex. And then where it comes in, say someone who's a little older and their body remembers, oh, if I do this movement, I get a quick stretch and I'm going to shorten so that we're ready to jump, or so that we're ready to run. But the thing is, the muscle doesn't, know the tendon's not quite ready for that. The muscle's like, hey, we're ready to boom, hang on. But then the tendon's like, yo, I don't have that kind of force anymore. And that's where we might get a rupture because they didn't progress into it.
Exactly.
So that explains a little bit of the stretch shorten cycle.
And that's why it's so important that we're not just looking at, a couple things in order to get us back into movement again. We don't just want to do heel raises and then progress to single leg heel raises and maybe even some single leg hops. Like, that is part of the story. But we also want to look at different velocities or how fast we're changing that shortened to that lengthened stage. And we're doing it in all different aspects. So I'm doing it on a single leg heel raise. I'm doing it from an elevated heel raise surface so that my heel drops lower and I have more of a stretch for that whole, gastroc to that tendon, or a calf to tendon, sorry. And also I'm doing it, like you said, landing, going from a jump to a land, moving in different directions, going at different speeds. Like, these are all, it might sound overwhelming a little bit, but if you do want to go play soccer or pick up ball or whatever it is that you want to go on a long hike that's going to have different, climbing different mountains and stuff that's going to be at different angles, you are going to need to train your body to be able to tolerate different velocities and different lengths of that tendon. And that's why, again, we talk about wearing Vivos shoes. And it's not just something that we just talk about. It's something that we use in our everyday. And we want our patients and our people, our friends, our family even, to start to move in the direction of wearing these shoes that don't offer as much external support, because then that allows your foot to build that internal support so that you can get more depth within that heel. You can get more range within that foot, because now I don't have that elevated heel or that really a big cushion in my shoe. I now have to, my body has to use it itself. My body has to react to different things itself and start to build that tolerance. And so even just having a flatter shoe allows the foot to work, allows that to get into that bigger stretch into that Achilles and into that heel and all the way through that calf system.
Yeah, I mean, when I started running with Vivos, I mean, you got to think the average shoe you might wear could have maybe a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch more of lift in the heel. So when you think my heel's dropping that much further, now your calf and your tendon is needing to lengthen that much more whenever the heel gets to the ground. So when I started wearing Vivos, man, my calves would be sore after I'd go on a 1/4 mile run. And now I can get up to 2 to 3 miles and still be fairly sore through the calves. But again, that's because that's where I'm growing. But had I gone out for a 6 mile run the first day, I don't know if I would have made it back.
Exactly.
So again, sometimes people will start wearing Vivos and it's like you kind of need to gauge into them. It might just be an hour for the first day or a half an hour walk. And then the next day, feel how your calf, how your feet, how your hips all respond.
Exactly. And just getting more used to working out barefoot, I think, is something that's so beneficial too. So whether that's like we have moments where we go meet up with friends on the grass and we will just do workouts and movements. I work out at home. And if I work out at home, and I hope you do too, where you do not wear shoes. Please don't have to wear shoes every single time you work out. If you do, that's where, again, start building into a lesser shoe. So again, with the Vivo barefoot shoes, building into that lesser support, at least you still have something on your foot. It gives you that comfort and that safety, but it's allowing your foot to still work. So again, if you want to go get, the shoe, try it out. We always are going to recommend it. We love them. You can go to the show notes and just click the link in the show notes and use code OPTIMAL15 at checkout. One of the studies we looked at, it shows that you can look at an image, like an MRI image, and see tendon changes and confirm, oh, this is why I'm having Achilles tendon pain, right? However, it's not always unilateral, meaning one side. So if we actually look and took images of both sides, even the asymptomatic side, the side that's not having pain, you can see that there's still tendon changes. So, and this is also why we can't just look at an image to confirm everything, right? But we also get to say, oh, rather than just comparing one side to the other, how can I work on both sides, and how can I continue up the chain, exactly like Dom's saying, how it might not just be that ankle issue or like that force in the calf. It might be both that we need to work, and it might be higher up that chain on that single side that's really causing the dysfunction to start to feel the symptoms more so.
For sure. So let's say that somebody is wanting to get back into playing basketball or tennis. You know, whatever it is that might be a little more explosive, right? Because then we're getting that faster stretch. How do we start to approach, okay, how do I know when I'm ready? How do I know when I'm getting there? And one of the first things we talked about is the mobility, right? Where's our ankle mobility at? Into dorsiflexion, into plantar flexion, or pointing down. Dorsiflexion is the foot coming up towards the shin, you know, or all the different ankle motions. And then moving after that, once we get used to the mobility, loading it. So doing those heel raises, and then doing heel raises where we have depth. Right.
So toes supported or toes elevated, and getting those heels to drop below the surface.
And that's where people always say like, oh, eccentrics are good, which eccentrics are great because they help us really load that muscle and learn to control with a certain amount of force. But again, that's a really slow stretch. So what's next? We need to start increasing the velocity of the stretch, which one of the best ways to do is just jumping of any sort. And
jumping in all different directions, side to side, front and back, single leg, like doing different things. And that's why I'm just going to toot the horn of the optimal body for a minute, because that is what HIIT workouts do. We get you to move in all different directions, jump and do these plyo type drills without needing to go super aggressive. So I would say you still probably can get more aggressive with plyometrics, especially if you're going to go play ball or anything like that. I would say, starting to do like more jumping up into boxes, plyometrics, or jumping to multiple boxes, or a higher type velocity stuff is still needed, but it's a good place to start if you're not used to jumping and you want to get back into it. A lot of the hits that we do with the jumping, one, I provide a lot of modifications, but two, there's ways to do these jumps that don't require so much force on the knees, on the hips, on the feet, and so you can start jumping and still feel like not scared about it, right? And that's always what you want to do. If you're not used to it, start at the basics and then start to build from there. And
if you have more questions, you can always try getting with someone in person. And I know a ton of incredible strength and conditioning coaches who know so much more about this than I do. A physical therapist would be able to help work with you through some of this stuff. So again, if you've been confused or a little bit confused about things we're saying, it's always good to get somebody there to help you take you through it.
Right. But ultimately, just getting an ultrasound, just working on that symptom, we've talked about this over and over and over again, it's really not going to be the thing that's going to help you through. And just taking a rest break is great to start to reduce symptoms, but then how do you get back in knowing that that's not going to happen again? And we don't want to exacerbate symptoms to the point of rupture, right? So working on this stuff now is so highly important. If you haven't even started single leg balance stuff, if you haven't even started single leg hill raises, like these are things to start saying, what have I been neglecting in my body that I can start adding back in? Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, to another PT Pro from the Optimal Body Podcast. We always appreciate your feedback, so don't forget to leave a comment below. Let us know what you think or what you want to continue to learn in the future. If you want us to go a little bit more specific too, let us know. We need your feedback so that we know how we can help you progress within your body, power within your body, so that you can learn the tools that you need. And I hope that you subscribe so you don't miss any in the future.